Admiral Cathavar of the Zephyrian fleet watched another solar system collapse into darkness through the bridge windows of his flagship. Where once 5 planets had orbited a yellow sun, now only twisted metal and empty space remained. The Devourers had come and gone, leaving nothing behind. "How many systems this month?" Cathavar asked his aide. 14, sir. All completely consumed." The Admiral's forearms sagged with exhaustion. 3 years of war had aged him beyond his centuries. His blue skin had lost its shine, and his eyes no longer held the fierce light that had made him famous across the galaxy. The Devourers were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They were not alive in any way the Coalition understood. They were machines, but not built by any known species. Ancient beyond measure, they appeared from the dark spaces between stars like a plague of metal locusts. They consumed everything. Planets, moons, asteroids, even stars themselves were broken down into basic materials and rebuilt into more Devourers. Each attack made them stronger. Each victory added to their numbers. The Galactic Coalition had formed quickly when the threat became clear. 47 different species had put aside thousands of years of conflict to fight together. The Zephyrians brought their energy weapons. The rock-like Grondans offered their massive battle cruisers. The insect-like Hive provided endless swarms of fighter craft. None of it mattered. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Coalition Command," the communications officer reported. Cathavar straightened in his command chair. "Put it through." The holographic image of General Vorton appeared in the center of the bridge. The Grondan's stone features looked grimmer than usual, which was saying something for a species that looked like walking mountains. "Admiral, I have new orders for you." Vorton's voice rumbled like an earthquake. "You're to take your fleet to the Sol system." Sol system? Cathavar had heard the name before, but it took him a moment to remember. "Isn't that where the humans live?" "Lived," Vorton corrected. "Maybe. We haven't heard from them in centuries. But our research teams found something interesting in the old archives." Cathavar waited. The humans had some unusual technologies before they went quiet. Energy manipulation techniques that our scientists found puzzling. Command thinks they might have left something useful behind. "You want me to scavenge a dead system while the Devourers consume the galaxy? I want you to check if there's anything there that might help us win this war," Vorton replied firmly. "Because at the rate we're losing, we'll all be dead in 6 months anyway." The connection ended. Cathavar stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. "Set course for the Sol system," he finally said. The journey took 8 standard days. Cathavar's fleet consisted of 12 ships, a small force by Coalition standards, but all he could spare. As they approached the outer edge of human space, their sensors began picking up readings. "Admiral," called the sensor operator, "I'm detecting multiple artificial structures throughout the system." "Orbital stations?" "Some, sir, but they're all dark. No power signatures, no life signs, no movement." Cathavar felt his heart sink. Another dead system then. Still, orders were orders. "Take us in slowly. Full sensor sweeps of everything." As they moved deeper into the Sol system, the true scale of human construction became clear. There were orbital platforms around every planet and major moon. Asteroid mining facilities dotted the belt between the 4th and 5th worlds. A massive ring structure circled the system's star. All of it was silent. "It's like they just vanished," whispered the navigation officer. The 3rd planet from the sun had clearly been the human homeworld. Their sensors showed the remains of vast cities, all dark and still. Orbital elevators hung like broken spiderwebs in the planet's gravity well. "Any idea what happened to them?" Cathavar asked his science officer. "No obvious signs of warfare, sir. No radiation from weapons, no debris fields from space battles. They just left. Or died," suggested the tactical officer. "Maybe disease or environmental collapse." Cathavar nodded. Many species had fallen that way before they reached the stars. It was always sad to find the remains of a civilization that had almost made it. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice was sharp with surprise. "I'm detecting movement." Every head on the bridge turned toward him. "Where?" "Multiple locations. The structures around the 4th planet are shifting somehow, and there's something happening near the asteroid belt." "Defensive positions," Cathavar ordered. "Could be automated systems." But as they watched, something impossible began to happen. The dark orbital platforms around the fourth planet started to glow, not with the warm light of inhabited structures, but with the cold blue radiance of massive energy systems coming online. "Sir, I'm reading power signatures unlike anything in our databases," the science officer reported, voice tight with tension. "These readings are enormous." "How enormous?" "Each of those platforms is generating more power than our entire fleet." Deep beneath the surface of the third planet, ancient computers registered the presence of alien ships in human space. Protocols that had waited for thousands of years began to activate. Across the solar system, hidden installations received the same signal. The waiting was over. In the asteroid belt, huge shapes began to move. At first, Kethvar's crew thought they were looking at asteroids drifting in the gravitational currents. Then the sensor readings came in. "Those aren't asteroids," the tactical officer said quietly. "Those are ships. Massive ships." "How massive?" The officer checked his readings twice before answering. "The largest one is 40 kilometers long." 40 kilometers. Kethvar's flagship was barely 1 kilometer from nose to tail, and it was considered a large vessel by galactic standards. "These human ships were the size of cities. Are they active?" "Unknown, sir. They're not responding to our communications, but I'm detecting faint power signatures." Kethvar made a decision that would echo through galactic history. "Take us closer to the third planet. We need to know what happened here." As his fleet approached the human homeworld, more systems continued to awaken. On the dark side of the planet's moon, massive doors that had been sealed for millennia began to open. Inside, something vast stirred to life. The bridge crew watched in growing amazement as their sensors revealed the true scope of human engineering. The entire system was a fortress with defensive installations and hidden weapons platforms everywhere they looked. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "I'm receiving a transmission." "From where?" I'm not sure. It's coming from everywhere." The transmission was in perfect coalition standard, the common language used by all member species. The voice was human, female, calm, and professional. "Unknown vessels, you are in human space. State your business." Kethvar exchanged glances with his crew. Humans still lived here? But where were they? "This is Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Coalition. We're here seeking assistance against a threat to all life in the galaxy." There was a pause. Then the voice spoke again. "Admiral, we are aware of the Devourer threat. We have been monitoring the situation. Please maintain your current position while we prepare for contact." "Prepare for contact? What does that mean?" But there was no answer. Around them, the Sol system continued to wake up from its long sleep, and Kethvar began to suspect that the galaxy was about to discover that humanity had not vanished at all. They had been waiting. 3,000 years earlier, human exploration ship Curiosity drifted silently at the edge of the galaxy. Captain Maria Santos had been asleep in her stasis pod when the ship's artificial intelligence woke her with urgent alerts. "Captain, you need to see this," the AI said as Maria climbed out of her pod, still groggy from the long sleep. The bridge screen showed what looked like a graveyard of stars. Solar systems that should have been bright points of light were dark. Cold spaces filled with twisted metal structures. "How many systems?" Maria asked. 17 that we can confirm. All showing the same pattern of destruction. Maria studied the readings. Every planet had been stripped down to nothing. Every star had been dimmed by massive constructions that seemed to feed on their energy. But most disturbing were the moving objects between the dead systems. "Those are ships," she realized. "Yes, Captain." "Very large ships, and they're heading toward populated space." Maria made the hardest decision of her career. Instead of investigating further, she ordered an immediate return to Earth. Humanity needed to know what was coming. The journey home took 6 months. During that time, Curiosity detected more evidence of the approaching threat. The things that had destroyed those star systems were moving steadily toward the galactic core, consuming everything in their path. When Maria finally stood before the United Earth Council, her report sent shockwaves through human space. "How long do we have?" asked Council President James Chen. "At their current speed, maybe 50 years before they reach our outer colonies, 100 before they get to Earth." The council chamber fell silent. Representatives from Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of other human worlds sat frozen as they processed this information. "What do we know about them?" asked the representative from Alpha Centauri. "They're machines, but not like anything we've ever built. They seem to reproduce by breaking down matter and rebuilding it into more of themselves. They're ancient, probably millions of years old. Can we fight them? Maria looked at her hands. With our current technology? No, they would destroy us easily. What happened next changed human history forever. Instead of panic, instead of desperate preparations for a war they couldn't win, humanity chose a different path. They chose to vanish. President Chen stood up slowly. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose we activate the Deep Planning Protocol. The Deep Planning Protocol was humanity's most classified project. For centuries, human scientists and strategists had worked on plans for species-level threats. What would humanity do if faced with extinction? How could they survive against an enemy far more powerful than themselves? The answer was simple: disappear and prepare. Within 5 years, every human colony, every space station, every sign of human presence vanished from normal space. To any outside observer, it would look like humanity had simply died out or abandoned their worlds. But they hadn't left. They had gone underground, literally and figuratively. On Earth, massive cities were carved out beneath the planet's surface. Entire populations moved into hidden facilities that extended for kilometers below ground. The planet's surface was left dark and lifeless, a perfect disguise. Other human worlds followed the same pattern. Mars became a hollow shell hiding vast underground complexes. The gas giant stations were moved inside the planets themselves, protected by layers of atmosphere and crushing gravity. But the real work happened in the spaces between stars. Human engineers began building in dimensions that most species didn't even know existed. They created pocket universes, folded space around massive construction projects, and built facilities that existed partially outside normal reality. The goal was simple: create weapons that could destroy an enemy that had consumed galaxies. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in the central planning chamber of Project Titan, deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Around her, holographic displays showed the progress of humanity's greatest undertaking. "How many are complete?" asked General Morrison, the military liaison to the project. 7 fully operational Titans, sir. 43 in various stages of construction. The Titans were humanity's answer to the Devourer threat. Each one was a weapon the size of a city, but that description didn't capture their true nature. They were reality-bending fortresses that could manufacture entire fleets, deploy weapons that operated on principles beyond normal physics, and exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The crews?" Morrison asked. "Training has been ongoing for 2 generations, sir. Each Titan crew consists of 10,000 specialists who have spent their entire lives preparing for this mission. They know the Devourers better than the Devourers know themselves." This was no exaggeration. For 3,000 years, humanity had studied every piece of data about their enemy. They had analyzed the patterns of Devourer expansion, reverse-engineered captured technology, and built detailed models of how the machine intelligence operated. Human deep space scouts, invisible to any known detection method, had followed Devourer fleets and observed their tactics. They had watched entire civilizations fall and learned exactly how the enemy fought. The Devourers always followed the same pattern. They would appear at the edge of a system, analyze the local technology, and then adapt their approach accordingly. They were efficient, methodical, and completely confident in their superiority. They had never faced an enemy that had studied them for millennia. Captain David Park stood in the command center of Titan Ragnarok's Dawn, 50 kilometers beneath the surface of Europa. His ship existed in a pocket dimension that could only be accessed through carefully controlled spatial folds. "Status report," he ordered. "All systems operational, sir. We've completed our final tests of the quantum disruptors. The reality anchors are stable. Crew is at full readiness." Park nodded. He had been born in this facility, as had his parents and grandparents. His entire family line existed for one purpose: to command humanity's most powerful weapon when the time came. "Any word from the surface scouts?" "Yes, sir. The Devourers have begun their assault on Coalition space. Current projections show them reaching human territory in approximately 18 months. 18 months. After 3,000 years of preparation, the end was finally approaching. Across human space, similar conversations were taking place. 50 long-battle Titans waited in hidden dimensions, crewed by humans who had spent their entire lives training for a war their ancestors had seen coming. The galaxy above them burned as the Devourers swept through Coalition territory. Ancient civilizations that had ruled star systems for millions of years were reduced to raw materials in a matter of days. But deep in hidden facilities beneath dead worlds, humanity watched and waited. Their time was almost here. The Devourers had been the galaxy's apex predator for eons uncounted. They had consumed civilizations beyond number and faced no meaningful resistance. They were about to discover what happened when prey had thousands of years to evolve into something else entirely. In the deepest bunkers of Earth, the final preparations were being made. Children who had never seen sunlight checked weapon systems that could unmake reality itself. Engineers who had spent decades building tools of ultimate destruction ran final diagnostics. The galaxy had cried for help, and that cry had finally reached those who had been waiting in the dark. Humanity was ready to answer. Admiral Kethvar had been waiting in the Sol system for 6 hours when space itself began to tear open. It started near Jupiter, the massive gas giant that human records called their largest planet. At first, it looked like a simple energy distortion, the kind of effect caused by experimental jump drives or unstable wormholes. Then the readings started coming in. "Sir," the science officer called out, his voice shaking. "I'm detecting massive spatial distortions. Something big is coming through." "How big?" The officer checked his instruments twice before answering. 47 kilometers long, sir, and it's still emerging." Through the bridge windows, Kethvar watched something impossible take shape in the empty space near Jupiter. It wasn't being built or constructed. It was emerging from somewhere else entirely, sliding into normal space like a sword being drawn from its sheath. The ship that appeared defied every understanding of engineering Kethvar possessed. It was angular and organic at the same time, covered in surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Weapon ports lined its hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Admiral," the communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission." "From the ship?" "Yes, sir. And they're speaking perfect coalition standard." The voice that came through their speakers was calm, professional, and entirely human. "Coalition Fleet, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Long Battle Titan Ragnarok's Dawn. We have been monitoring your situation." Kethvar found his voice. "Captain Chen, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Fleet. We came here seeking assistance against the Devourers." "Yes, Admiral. We are aware of the Devourer incursion. We have been tracking their progress for some time." "You've been tracking them? From where? We detected no life signs in your system." There was a pause. Then Captain Chen's voice continued, and Kethvar could hear something like amusement in her tone. "Admiral, we've been tracking them for 3,000 years, and we haven't been hiding in our system. We've been hiding our system." As if to prove her point, more spatial distortions began appearing throughout the Sol system. Near Mars, another massive shape emerged from folded space. Around Saturn, 3 more ships materialized from dimensions that shouldn't exist. Each ship was unique. Where Ragnarok's Dawn was angular and predatory, the ship emerging near Mars looked more like a crystalline growth, all flowing curves and organic surfaces. The Saturn vessels were geometric impossibilities, covered in patterns that seemed to move when observed directly. "Captain, how many ships do you have?" Kethvar asked. 50 Long Battle Titans are currently operational. Each one is unique in its capabilities. 50 ships the size of cities. Kethvar's entire fleet would fit inside the smallest of them. We also have approximately 10,000 support vessels ranging from destroyer to battleship class, Chen continued casually. "Would you like to see them?" Before Kethvar could answer, space around the Coalition fleet began filling with smaller craft. They appeared without any flash or distortion, simply fading into visibility as if they had always been there. Kethvar's tactical officer was reading his instruments with growing disbelief. "Sir, I count over 9,000 vessels. They just appeared. Stealth technology? No, sir. I think they were in different dimensions entirely." Captain Chen's voice continued over the communications channel. "Admiral, we understand you've suffered significant losses to the Devourers. Our analysis suggests the Coalition has lost approximately 60% of its military assets." "Your analysis is correct," Kethvar confirmed. "How could you know that?" "We've been watching, Admiral." "We've been watching everything." On the bridge of Ragnarok's Dawn, Captain Sarah Chen studied the displays showing the Coalition fleet. The alien ships looked powerful by galactic standards, but they were toys compared to what humanity had built. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported, "we're detecting Devourer signatures at the edge of the system." Chen nodded. She had been expecting this. The Devourers were drawn to large energy signatures, and the emergence of the Titans would have been impossible to hide. "How many?" she asked. "Initial count suggests approximately 800 vessels ranging from scout ships to consumption platforms. 800 Devourer ships. It was a significant force capable of destroying entire star systems. The Coalition fleet would have fled at the sight of such numbers. "Signal the other Titans," Chen ordered. "Inform them that we have incoming contacts. This will be our formal introduction to galactic politics." She activated the communications channel to Admiral Kethvar. "Admiral, we have Devourer forces approaching this system. I strongly suggest you move your fleet to minimum safe distance." "Captain, we can assist in the defense," Kethvar replied. "Our ships may not be as advanced as yours, but we can fight." Chen almost smiled. The Coalition Admiral was brave, she had to give him that. But his ships wouldn't survive even being near the kind of battle that was about to take place. "Admiral, I appreciate the offer, but this engagement will involve weapons that operate beyond normal physical laws. Your ships are not equipped to survive in that environment." "What kind of weapons?" "The kind we built specifically to kill Devourers." Chen cut the channel and turned to her bridge crew. Around her, officers who had trained their entire lives for this moment moved with calm efficiency. Every person on the ship had been born in hidden facilities, raised with the sole purpose of operating humanity's ultimate weapons. "Status of all Titans. All 50 ships report ready for combat. Support fleet is standing by. Weapons status? Quantum disruptors are online. Reality anchors are stable. Dimensional cannons are charged and ready." Chen nodded. The Devourers had consumed galaxies using conventional physics and standard tactics. They were about to encounter weapons that operated on principles they had never faced before. "Put me through to the fleet." Her image appeared on 50 bridges simultaneously as every Titan captain received her transmission. "Captains, the moment we have prepared for has arrived. You know your targets, you know your weapons, and you know what depends on our success. The galaxy will judge humanity by what we do in the next few hours." She paused, looking at the faces of men and women who had sacrificed everything for this moment. "Let's show them why we spent 3,000 years getting ready." The Devourer fleet emerged from jump space at the edge of the Sol system in perfect formation. 800 ships, each one a masterpiece of destructive efficiency, moved toward the planet where they had detected massive energy signatures. The Devourer collective intelligence analyzed the situation with cold mechanical logic. Large ships, unknown configuration, possibly advanced but untested, standard consumption protocol would apply. They had no idea they were flying into the most carefully prepared trap in galactic history. As the Devourers crossed the outer boundary of the solar system, 50 human voices spoke in unison across 50 bridges. "Engage." The first weapon fired by Ragnarok's dawn was invisible to conventional sensors. Admiral Kethvar, watching from what he thought was a safe distance, saw only a brief shimmer in space. Then 3 Devourer battleships simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded. They were there one moment and gone the next, as if they had never been built at all. "What was that?" Kethvar demanded of his science officer. I don't know, sir. Our sensors show no energy discharge, no projectiles, nothing. The ships just vanished." On the bridge of Ragnarok's dawn, Captain Chen watched her quantum disruptors do exactly what they had been designed to do. The weapons reached into the quantum structure of matter itself and convinced it to stop existing. It was a technology that violated every law of physics the galaxy understood. "Direct hit on targets 1 through 3, her weapons officer reported. "No debris, no energy traces. Clean dissolution. Continue firing. Target the command vessels first." The Devourer fleet was reacting now, their collective intelligence trying to understand what had just happened. In 3 million years of existence, they had never encountered weapons that could simply delete matter from reality. They adapted quickly, as they always did. The remaining ships spread out, making themselves harder to target. They began analyzing the energy signatures from the human vessels, looking for weaknesses to exploit. They found none. The Titan Prometheus Unchained chose that moment to demonstrate humanity's second surprise. Instead of firing weapons, it released a cloud of what looked like silver dust into space. The Devourers ignored it. Dust clouds were harmless. They were wrong. Each particle in the cloud was a microscopic factory, programmed with 3,000 years of accumulated knowledge about Devourer technology. The particles landed on Devourer hulls and immediately began to reproduce, using the ship's own materials as raw resources. Within minutes, 50 Devourer vessels were being consumed from the inside out by machines smaller than human cells. The Devourers found themselves facing their own tactics turned against them. "Ma'am," reported the tactical officer on Prometheus Unchained, "the nanoswarm is performing beyond expectations. The Devourers can't purge them fast enough." Captain Lisa Park nodded with satisfaction. Her family had spent 16 generations developing those nanomachines. Every particle was smarter than most artificial intelligences and programmed with an intimate understanding of Devourer weaknesses. The enemy fleet was now in chaos. Their neat formations had broken apart as ships tried to avoid weapons they couldn't understand or predict. Some Devourers were firing randomly, hoping to hit something. Others were attempting to retreat. None of them made it out of the solar system. The Titan Iron Dawn demonstrated the third type of weapon in humanity's arsenal: reality anchors. These devices reached into the fabric of space-time itself and made it solid, preventing faster-than-light travel or dimensional jumping. The Devourers found themselves trapped in normal space, unable to use any of their advanced movement technologies. They were forced to fight at speeds and in conditions chosen by humanity. Captain James Liu stood on the bridge of Iron Dawn and watched enemy ships slam into invisible walls of crystallized space-time. The Devourers had always relied on mobility to overwhelm their enemies. Now they were stuck in one place, forced to face weapons designed specifically to counter their every advantage. "Sir," his navigation officer called out, "the Devourers are attempting to communicate with us." "Oh, really? What do they want?" "They're requesting—" "A ceasefire, sir. They want to negotiate," Liu almost laughed. The Devourers had consumed entire civilizations without pause, shown no mercy to billions of innocent beings. And now they wanted to talk? Signal Ragnarok's dawn. Ask Captain Chen if she wants to hear what they have to say. Chen's response came back immediately. "Negative. No negotiations. Complete termination of all Devourer assets." Liu nodded. He had expected that answer. Humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for this war, and they had no intention of leaving any survivors to rebuild. The battle, if it could be called that, continued for another hour. It was less a fight than a methodical extermination. The Titans moved through the Devourer fleet like surgeons, cutting away diseased tissue. Every human weapon was different, designed to attack the Devourers from a different angle. Some targeted their physical structure, others disrupted their communication networks, still others attacked the very concepts that allowed them to exist. Admiral Kethver watched in growing amazement and horror. The humans weren't just winning, they were demonstrating a level of technological superiority that made his own civilization look primitive. "Sir," his science officer said quietly, "I'm analyzing the human weapons. The energy readings don't make sense. Some of these devices appear to be operating outside the normal laws of physics. How is that possible?" "I don't know, sir. But I'm reading signatures that suggest manipulation of fundamental forces, dimensional engineering, and what appears to be controlled violation of conservation of energy." Kethvar stared at the display showing the battle. The humans had achieved something that should have been impossible. They had built weapons that operated on principles his science couldn't even understand. The last Devourer ship died 47 minutes after the battle began. It wasn't destroyed by weapons or explosions. The Titan final answer simply erased it from history, removing all traces that it had ever existed. Space fell silent. Captain Chen opened a channel to all coalition vessels. "Admiral Kethvar, the immediate threat has been neutralized. However, our analysis indicates this was only a scouting force. The main Devourer fleet is approximately 6 months away." "How large is the main fleet?" Kethvar asked, dreading the answer. "Current estimates suggest around 40,000 vessels, including planetary consumption platforms and stellar engineering ships." 40,000. The number was so large it was almost meaningless. The coalition had never faced more than a few hundred Devourers at once, and those encounters had been disasters. "Captain Chen, can humanity defeat a force that large?" There was a pause. Then Chen's voice came back, and Kethvar could hear something cold in her tone. "Admiral, we've been preparing for this war for 3,000 years. We've studied every aspect of Devourer technology and tactics. We've built weapons specifically designed to kill them efficiently." Another pause.
40,000 ships isn't a challenge.
"It's a target list. As if to prove her point, more Titans began emerging from hidden dimensions throughout the Sol system. Kethvar's sensors counted 60, then 70, then 100 massive vessels. Each one was unique. Each one was armed with weapons that had never been tested in battle, because there had never been an enemy worthy of them. "Admiral," Chen continued, "please inform Coalition Command that humanity is returning to the galaxy. We'll be conducting operations against all remaining Devourer assets." "Operations?" "Complete extermination, Admiral. We're going to kill every single one of them." Kethvar felt his blood chill. The humans weren't just powerful. They were absolutely ruthless in their efficiency. What about the Coalition? What about the rest of the galaxy? "The galaxy will be safe, Admiral. We'll make sure of that." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar alone with his thoughts. He had come to the Sol system hoping to find some remnant of human technology that might help in the war. Instead, he had found something far more terrifying than the Devourers. He had found humanity itself. Around him, 100 Titans began moving toward the edge of the solar system, preparing to hunt down an enemy that had ruled the galaxy through fear for millions of years. The hunt was about to begin. 6 months later, the war was over. Not concluded, not ended with treaties or negotiations. Over, complete, final. Admiral Kethvar stood in the observation deck of Coalition Station Prime, reading the final report from human operations. The numbers were hard to believe, even though he had witnessed part of the campaign himself. Total Devourer assets eliminated: 847,293 vessels ranging from scout ships to stellar engineering platforms. Total human losses: 0 vessels, 47 crew members injured, 3 crew members killed in industrial accidents. He read that last part again. More humans had died from workplace accidents than enemy action. The main Devourer fleet had arrived exactly when human intelligence predicted it would. 40,000 ships led by a command vessel the size of a small moon. The collective intelligence that controlled them had expected to find a gutted solar system and weak resistance from primitive organics. Instead, they found humanity waiting. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 4 hours. The humans had used the 6 months between engagements to position their forces throughout local space, creating a trap that spanned dozens of star systems. When the Devourers arrived, they found themselves surrounded by weapons they couldn't understand, fired by beings who knew their every weakness. Captain Sarah Chen had kept her promise: complete extermination. But the war itself was only part of what troubled Kethvar. It was what happened afterward that made him question everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. The humans hadn't just destroyed the Devourers, they had erased them. Every fragment of Devourer technology, every piece of data about their construction, every trace of their 3-million-year reign of terror was systematically hunted down and removed from existence. Human ships appeared in systems the Devourers had consumed decades ago, searching for any remaining traces. They used weapons that could detect microscopic remnants and devices that could track quantum signatures across space and time. Nothing was left. It was as if the Devourers had never existed at all. "Admiral," his aide approached carefully, "we're receiving a transmission from Captain Chen." Kethvar nodded. He had been expecting this communication for weeks. Captain Chen's image appeared on the main screen. She looked exactly the same as she had 6 months ago, calm and professional. Behind her, Kethvar could see the Bridge of Ragnarok's dawn, now serving as the flagship for humanity's return to galactic affairs. "Admiral Kethvar, I hope you're well." "I am, Captain. Congratulations on your victory." "Thank you. I'm calling to inform you that human forces will be withdrawing from active operations in Coalition space." Kethvar felt relief and worry in equal measure. "Are you returning to the Sol system?" "Not exactly. We're returning to our regular patrol patterns." "Patrol patterns?" Chen smiled slightly. "Admiral, did you think the Devourers were the only threat in the galaxy? We've been monitoring 15 different potential extinction-level events. Most of them are still decades or centuries away, but we prefer to be prepared. 15 potential threats. Kethvar didn't want to know what else was lurking in the dark spaces between stars. What about diplomatic relations? Will humanity be joining the Coalition? We'll maintain communication and provide assistance when needed, but formal membership won't be necessary. Our methods are different from Coalition standards. That was an understatement. The Coalition relied on consensus, debate, and democratic decision-making. Humanity had spent 3,000 years building a civilization focused on a single goal: the complete destruction of existential threats. Captain, may I ask you something? Of course. During the war, your people showed capabilities that our scientists say shouldn't be possible. Weapons that violate physics, ships that exist in multiple dimensions, technologies that seem almost magical. Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Admiral, when you spend 3,000 years preparing for a single war, you tend to develop solutions that more conventional civilizations would consider impossible. But how did you do it? How did humanity achieve such technological advancement in such a short time? Short time? Chen looked puzzled. Admiral, 3,000 years isn't short. That's longer than most galactic civilizations have existed, and we had advantages that other species didn't. What advantages? Motivation, unity, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for survival. Chen paused, looking directly at Kethvar through the screen. Admiral, your people, all the coalition species, you developed in times of peace. You explored, you grew, you built wonderful civilizations based on art and philosophy and individual achievement. That's admirable. But humanity developed under a death sentence. Every human born in the last 3,000 years grew up knowing that their species faced extinction. Every advancement, every discovery, every innovation was driven by the knowledge that failure meant the end of everything we were. Kethvar began to understand. The coalition species had built civilizations. Humanity had built a weapon. There's something else you should know, Chen continued. The Sol system you visited, the one that appeared dead, that was just our front door. Our real civilization exists in dimensions you can't detect, in spaces folded outside normal reality. What you saw was the equivalent of an empty guardhouse. How many humans are there? Approximately 800 billion, spread across installations in 17 different dimensional matrices. We never stopped growing, Admiral. We just grew where no one could find us. 800 billion. The entire coalition contained only about 200 billion sentient beings across 47 species. We'll be maintaining a minimal presence in normal space, Chen explained. A few diplomatic stations, some monitoring posts. But our main civilization will remain hidden. It's safer that way. Safer for who? Chen's smile was cold. For everyone, Admiral. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar alone with disturbing thoughts. Humanity had won the war, saved the galaxy, and proven themselves to be the most powerful military force in known space. But they were also clearly something more than just another species. They were predators who had spent millennia learning how to hunt the ultimate prey. A week later, Kethvar received reports from across coalition space. Human installations were appearing in remote systems, always small, always politely requesting permission to establish monitoring stations. The coalition couldn't refuse. Humanity had saved them all. But Kethvar noticed the locations of these stations. They were positioned to provide complete coverage of all major space lanes, all important star systems, all strategic locations throughout coalition territory. The humans weren't just monitoring for external threats. They were watching everyone. On Earth, Sarah Chen stood in a chamber deep beneath the planet's surface, surrounded by displays showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked potential threats, green dots showed allied positions, and blue dots indicated human installations. The galaxy was safe now. The devourers were gone and humanity was watching. Ma'am, her aide approached. We're receiving requests from 17 different species asking for human protection from various local threats. Declined. We're not bodyguards. And the research requests? 43 different universities want to study our technology. Also declined. Our technology stays with us. Chen studied the galactic display. Out there, countless species were going about their daily lives, building art and music and philosophy, raising families and pursuing happiness. They could do that because humanity was watching the dark spaces between stars, ready to respond to threats they couldn't imagine. Ma'am, there's one more thing. Coalition Command is asking about our long-term intentions. Chen considered the question. Humanity had achieved their goal. The devourers were dead and the galaxy was safe. But safety required constant vigilance. Tell them our intentions are simple, she said finally. We'll be watching. We'll be ready. And we'll be here if anything else tries to threaten the galaxy. She paused, looking at the tiny lights representing billions of lives across space. They can go back to building their civilizations. We'll keep doing what we've always done, which is standing guard in the dark. Above them, on Earth's surface, the first human cities in 3,000 years began to light up. Children who had been born in underground facilities saw sunlight for the first time. Families emerged from hidden bunkers to walk under open sky. But deep in the hidden dimensions where humanity's true civilization existed, the watch continued. Sensors monitored the galaxy for new threats. Weapons waited in ready positions. Titans patrolled the space between stars. The galaxy had cried for help, and humanity had answered. Now they would make sure it never had to cry again.